Have you ever stopped to think about the price we pay for everything around us? Not just the dollars and cents, but the real, invisible cost. The cost that we don't see when we grab a cup of coffee, wear a t-shirt, or hop on a plane for a weekend getaway. We know the system is broken, but how did it get this way? And why are we paying for it, even when we don't realize it? Today, we're diving into a lesser-known but powerful concept from Karl Marx that could explain everything from climate change to resource depletion. It's called the Metabolic Rift, and it shows us how capitalism has disrupted our relationship with the natural world. This isn't just an environmental issue, it's an economic issue, a social issue, and dare I say a human issue. If we can understand what went wrong, maybe we can figure out how to fix it. Let's start by asking a simple question. What happens when the relationship between people and the planet goes wrong? Part 1. Defining the metabolic rift. To understand the metabolic rift, let's think of it like a broken relationship. When you're in a healthy relationship, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or even the land you live on, there's give and take. You nurture each other. You exchange things that keep both sides thriving. But when that relationship becomes strained or disconnected, everything falls apart. Marx argued that under capitalism, humans don't just exploit labor, they also exploit nature. This is what he meant by the metabolic rift. He believed that under capitalism, people are forced to extract from the environment without returning anything of value. This one-way street creates a disconnection between humans and the earth. It's like taking, without replenishing or repairing. Now let me paint you a picture. Imagine a farmer in the 1800s working his plot of land. Back then, farmers didn't just take from the earth, they gave back too. They practiced crop rotation, planting different crops to avoid depleting the soil. They used natural fertilizers like manure, and when crops died off, they decomposed naturally, enriching the soil for the next season. The farm worked in symbiosis with nature. This was sustainable agriculture, and it was common practice for centuries. It wasn't just about food production, it was about living in balance with the environment. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the picture looks a lot different. Instead of rotating crops, modern industrial farms plant monocultures, the same crop over and over. This depletes the soil, and rather than using manure or natural methods, these farms rely heavily on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. These chemicals do help crops grow, but they also kill the soil, contaminate the water, and harm local ecosystems. It's a vicious cycle. This is where the metabolic rift comes in. Marx saw that capitalism didn't just change the way we worked, it changed how we interacted with the earth. It made us treat nature like an object to be exploited for short-term profit, rather than something we share a mutual relationship with. Part 2. The role of capitalism in the rift. You might be thinking, okay, so capitalism isn't great for the environment, but how does it specifically contribute to this rift? Well, let's take a deeper look at how capitalism creates this disconnection between us and nature. Take, for example, the timber industry. Imagine you're running a logging company. Your goal isn't to care for the forest, it's to make money. You cut down trees, sell them for profit, and move on. It doesn't matter if the trees are part of an old-growth forest, home to rare wildlife, or part of an ecosystem that's irreplaceable. You're cutting them down to sell the timber and make money. Now that forest is gone. You move on to the next one, and the cycle continues. The timber company doesn't have to pay the price for deforestation or the displacement of wildlife, but the people living in those forests, the animals, and future generations, all of them pay the price for this greed. This is the metabolic rift in action. Nature is no longer a resource to be nurtured, it's a resource to be exploited, depleted, and discarded when it's no longer profitable. Let's think about the oil industry for a moment. Oil companies dig deep into the earth to extract fossil fuels that power our cars, homes, and industries. But what happens after the oil is extracted? The environment is left with oil spills, polluted rivers, and damaged ecosystems. Here's the kicker. These industries don't bear the true cost of their actions. The price we pay at the gas pump doesn't reflect the environmental damage, the health consequences, or the future cost of climate change. Once again, we're taking from the planet, but we're not giving back. Part 3. The cost of capitalism's disconnection. So far, we've talked about the environment, but the metabolic rift goes even deeper. It's not just about nature, it's about human beings too. Because when we treat nature like a thing to be used up, we start to treat each other the same way. Capitalism doesn't just exploit the earth, it exploits people as well. Think about the fast fashion industry. Clothes are cheap because they're made in sweatshops, where workers are paid next to nothing and forced to work in horrible conditions. The materials that go into these clothes, synthetic fibers like polyester, are made from fossil fuels, which contribute to pollution and climate change. And the clothes themselves are designed to fall apart quickly, pushing consumers to buy more. When you buy a $5 t-shirt, you're not just buying cheap fabric, you're buying into an entire system that exploits workers and nature. The people making these clothes are exploited for their labor, and the planet is exploited for the raw materials. And when you throw the clothes away, that's more waste piling up in landfills, contributing to a cycle of overconsumption and environmental degradation. Part 4. The Relevance Today and the Future. So, what does all of this mean for us today? What does it mean for our future? Well, as we face a climate crisis, rising inequality, and resource scarcity, the metabolic rift is becoming more apparent. And it's not just an environmental issue, it's a social issue too. Take the example of deforestation in the Amazon. The Amazon isn't just a forest, it's the lungs of the planet. It produces 20% of the world's oxygen. Yet, every year, vast swaths of it are cut down for agricultural expansion, primarily for beef and soy production. Here's the thing. The people who are cutting down the forest don't live in the Amazon. They're not breathing the air that's being polluted. The people who suffer are the indigenous communities, the wildlife, and ultimately, all of us. The Amazon's destruction is a global problem, but the people making the profits don't face the consequences. So what's the solution? Is it too late to fix the rift? Part 5. The Call to Action. The good news is, it's not too late. The solution begins with a shift in values. We need to understand that our actions have consequences, and those consequences go far beyond what we can see in the short term. There's hope in examples like sustainable farming. Farmers who are shifting back to organic practices, planting cover crops, rotating crops, and using natural fertilizers. These practices aren't just good for the soil, they're good for people, animals, and the planet. And it's not just farmers who can make a difference. We can too. From where we shop, how we consume, and the policies we support, we all have the power to begin healing the metabolic rift. Imagine a world where we work with nature, not against it. A world where we take only what we need and give back what we can. This isn't just an idealistic dream. It's a possibility. And it starts with you. Conclusion. Karl Marx's concept of the metabolic rift isn't just a historical critique, it's a warning and a call to action. We've allowed the bond between people and nature to break, and now we're seeing the consequences. But it's not too late to change course. The solution is within reach, and it begins with each of us.